welcome to Neighbor to Neighbor. Neighbor to Neighbor helps neighbors make their neighborhoods great, because great neighborhoods don't happen by accident. We're excited today to present you the culmination of some 30 neighborhood leaders, council representatives, and planning staff who met for over the last year to produce this white paper that describes a more collaborative, engaged, and neighborhood-friendly planning and zoning process. Today, we'll hear from several of those neighborhood leaders that contributed to the white paper: Cheryl Mays, Winnie Forrester, and Gordon Hayes. We'll also be hearing from Jim Hawk, Executive Director of Neighbor to Neighbor, and Councilperson Fabian Bedney. Each will make a brief statement with regard to the white paper. We will entertain questions following those statements. We're also joined today by a couple of other people who were a part of the process, Cynthia T. and Tom Cash. One-on-one interviews will be held following the close. Now, if you allow me to introduce Jim Hawk, who just stepped out of the room. All right, Jim, if you will now step up to the podium.
It's an honor to be here today, to be standing here with my colleagues who are from every part of Davidson County, working hard on neighborhood issues, working hard on community issues, trying to make a difference right where they live. Many residents from across Davidson County increasingly feel overwhelmed by rapid development in their neighborhoods and frustrated in their attempts to understand and engage in the metro planning process. Neighbor to Neighbor travels across the Davidson County, and we hear this again and again in neighborhoods near and far. And so 3 years ago, we said something needed to happen, and last year we decided to do something about that. And so for the last 10 months, 28 neighborhood and community leaders closely examined the metro planning process. Together, we identified over 50 barriers to resident and neighborhood participation and engagement. These community and neighborhood leaders represent neighborhoods across Davidson County and are comprised of leaders who regularly address development and zoning issues in their own neighborhoods. This paper is significant for a couple of reasons. First of all, because this is really the first attempt that we've had to really bring together neighborhood leaders from across the county to discuss these issues. What was surprising about our initial conversations was how frustrated we all are with the current system, how we find that to be a system that is difficult to understand and even more difficult to navigate. And what we also found was that we all had some pretty good ideas of what needed to happen to change. The second reason why it is important is because we've come to some conclusions, and trying to find unanimity or even a strong majority of people is often difficult. But in this document, we have found a reason to come together and to celebrate things that need to happen. Most notably, we really need to change the model for working with planning in our city. Currently, the plan is that developers come in, they make their proposals, they have a long time and have a lot of ability to converse with the planning department and to make their case, and then it seems at the last moment, neighborhoods get a chance to make their comments. We are advocating for a more collaborative approach, an approach where every neighborhood has a seat at the table when it comes to issues impacting their own neighborhood. We're advocating that this doesn't happen at the last minute, but that it happens as early as possible. And so today you're going to hear from three neighborhood leaders and one Metro Council member who's going to be discussing how they view this document, how it is important for their own neighborhoods.
begin our remarks with Cheryl. Sorry, Winnie, forgive me, Winnie.
I'm Winnie Forrester. I'm president of the Haynes Heights Neighborhood Association, and I'm also a member of the Haynes Trinity Neighborhood Coalition. So Neighbor to Neighbor does a lot of fantastic things. Putting together the think tank is a great example of something that they've done that showcases what collaborative efforts can achieve when you bring together committed community leaders. It's been an honor to participate this last 10 months. I live in the Haynes Trinity community, and we've certainly had our share of public struggles with land use policy over the last few years. Our community is very concerned about preservation and sustainability of our minority historic neighborhoods. We know that development is coming. All available land on West Trinity Lane has already been bought by developers, and real estate prices have skyrocketed. We want and deserve public engagement on what is best for our community. We are not against change. We want and need revitalization, but we are concerned about the risk of gentrification and displacement of our longtime residents. Almost 2 years ago, we had over 200 people participate in an update to our Nashville Next community plan. And while we had general consensus at the time, there was limited follow-up and community engagement afterwards. Rezonings quickly occurred that allowed much greater heights than we had understood possible. We often found ourselves with little information or resources facing experienced developers, engineers, and attorneys who have been in business for decades. It became obvious that we needed policies in place to protect us that encourage long-term engagement and widespread dissemination of early information about potential development. My hope is this document will provide a framework with viable recommendations for city planners and public servants all across our city.
Thank you, Winnie. Cheryl?
Thank you, Valerie. Again, my name is Cheryl Mays. I am the Vice President of the Cambridge Forest Subdivision in Southeast Nashville. And I am excited to have been a part of the planning think tank. This document, as it is written, I do see that it is going to be revised over time and only get better. So what it does for our community is provide an opportunity for our neighbors to come together in a way that they had not before. Generally speaking, in the Southeast Nashville area, we have a large number of HOA communities. And this document provides an opportunity for us to take down the siloed walls and start working collaboratively together to understand what the policies are and what they could be. As Winnie just explained, we are an area that is prime for development. We have a lot of residential development currently going on in Southeast Nashville, and we are expecting a high volume of business development to follow soon. With this document and having the opportunity to understand how the planning and zoning works in the city of Nashville, it gives our neighbors, our communities, an opportunity to determine how these policies are going to affect us, not just now, but long term. The planning process has always been somewhat of a mystery for the general population, and with this information being available to the general public now, especially to community leaders, it provides an opportunity for us to then go to champion for our own communities, and to also work with our elected officials to give them a quicker response on how the potential developments could eventually affect our communities. So what I'd like to say is I'm very grateful for this document being provided, and it's been a great opportunity to be on board with the think tank. One of the outcomes, or one of the byproducts of this white paper is a new organization that has been developed in Southeast Nashville. It is called the Antioch HOA Connect Group, and it is bringing a combination of about 20 different community leaders together to have these conversations. And this document will be used as we go forward in continuing to develop our voices in our community. So again, it's been my pleasure and my privilege to serve on this think tank, and I'm looking forward to our next steps. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Gordon?
Good morning. I'm Gordon Stacy Harmon. I'm chairperson of the steering committee for the Highland Heights Neighborhood Association, and I've been a long-term resident of East Nashville and prior to that, historic Germantown. 2 years ago, I received a small squarish card in the mail that alerted me to a rezoning application near my home. I called the number listed on the card to get some answers, only to discover that those answers led to even more questions. I attended my local neighborhood association meeting, only to discover that many of my neighbors were also just as confused and frustrated by the difficulties in getting answers. But not answers to just this one project. Several large projects were in the works, and there had even been a recent sweeping change to our neighborhood's land use policy. A general lack of knowledge of these happenings seemed to be commonplace. A year ago, I was honored and humbled by an invitation to participate in this think tank. At the first meeting, I was both shocked and comforted by the realization that the frustrations and lack of knowledge concerning policy, process, and engagement were commonplace in neighborhoods across all metropolitan Nashville and Davidson County. Even well-seasoned community leaders with years of engagement were facing similar challenges. Residents, whether they were homeowners or renters, felt excluded, and even worse, felt like any attempts to be part of the process were futile. This commission report provides a blueprint, a roadmap, if you will, to addressing and resolving these issues. Whether used by an individual, a neighborhood association, Metro Council members, or even the mayor, the recommendations can and will vastly improve communications on planning and development in our growing city. Neighbors can take steps to get engaged without feeling like they are fighting a losing battle. Developers can engage neighborhoods earlier in the process to earn their support on specific projects. One example is leveraging technology tools that Metro already uses to improve and streamline notifications. Instead of relying solely on printed mailed postcards to notify residents within a 600 feet boundary of a property that's potentially being rezoned, Metro's GIS and mapping tools can be used with the same email program that notifies citizens of council meetings, BZA meetings, posting of agendas, and so forth. People voluntarily sign up for such notifications, so it could be reasonable to incorporate these tools into the rezoning application process without a huge investment by Metro. Postcards can still be mailed, but with this additional notification tool, neighborhood leaders can stay on top of developments within their area, even if they don't get the physical notifications. As chairperson of the Highland Heights Neighborhood Association Steering Committee, I've already started to incorporate some of these ideas when communicating with our neighbors. I check the online Metro tools several times a week for new rezoning applications. I check the online, or I engage with neighbors who have questions about properties and developments, and I regularly post updates in an attempt to keep the neighborhood in the know. It's a lot of work, and we only sit within 1 small square mile of Nashville proper. By embracing this report and adopting these recommendations, more of our residents can be engaged and help manage the growth that we are experiencing. We all benefit. I wish to express my thanks to the staff of the Nashville Planning Department who've answered all my questions, the members of the Planning Commission who provided insight on these current processes, the members of Metro Council who've engaged with our group, and the leadership of Neighbor to Neighbor for giving me this opportunity. Lastly, I thank my colleagues on this think tank, without whom I never would have had the realization that we share these common issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Gordon. Councilperson Bennett.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm Fabian Bedne. I am a council member. I represent District 31, but I'm also the chair of the Planning, Historical, and Zoning Committee of the Metro Council. And in the past, I was a BZA board member, and that informs my view of the shortcomings that we face in the city when it comes to community engagement and the opportunities. So, like my peers in this meeting, I was very excited when I was invited to come to this think tank. It was an opportunity to have a sense of what are the issues citywide, and also this great document that I highly encourage people to read, because it's very, probably 99% of people in Nashville already believe this is needed, and this is going to be something they're going to enjoy. So I wanted to take a minute to thank the other council members that were part of this group. Councilmember Berkeley Allen, Nancy Van Rees, and Brett Wieters. They attended the meetings and they helped put together this document. And obviously, I'm also thankful to all the other community leaders. So what type of a city do we want to have? What type of city do we want to build? And do we believe that people in Nashville, that the community should be the ones that are making decisions about what type of city do we need to live in? And I think the answer is yes. What I hear as I'm talking to people all over the city is that people want to be given a chance to participate if they want to. The problem is many times people don't know that something is coming up, and they don't know it because of the failures of the city to properly inform people that something is happening. I have been to countless meetings, both at the BZA and the Planning Commission, where people say, I saw a sign, I tried to call, I don't know what this is about, so I just came to find out more about it. Well, that is a wasted opportunity. I mean, we really want people to know very well what is coming, so they have an opportunity to participate and to shape and to influence that process from the get-go. We want communities to participate together to come up with a vision for their community. We don't want people to be reactionary, but we want people to be proactive. We want to build a city that really reflects the type of city we want to build. And this document, it's an opportunity to do that. So as a council member, I'm going to push to make sure that many of the recommendations that are here are enacted by the city. They are all opportunities to streamline the process. I believe that even developers will appreciate having a clear path forward, instead of having to navigate a very complex and instead of having one system for the whole system. Right now, we depend a lot on each council member and the level of engagement they want to see happen. So by having a better, more comprehensive way to go about development in the city, I think we're going to help not only the residents, but the development community and everybody that is interested and invested in making this a better city to all. So having said that, I appreciate the opportunity and I'm honored to be part of this. And I want to thank Neighbor to Neighbor for having taken the courage to bring us together and to put this document forward. I highly recommend that people get a hold of it. I think it's going to be online and you're going to appreciate having a chance to read it. I'm Councilman Bednar, and I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Bednar. Tom or Senior, would you like to make remarks?
My colleagues said well.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And we'll close now.